Welcome to Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel. And I'm so excited today because I have with me Patricia Walsh, who is an evolutionary astrologer. And being a past life regressionist myself, as well as an astrologer, I can't tell you how excited I've been reading your book, Patricia. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's, in fact, I think I'd better just say what the book is. It's Understanding Karmic Complexes, Evolutionary Astrology, and Regression Therapy. So this is the subject. And I've literally just put your birth details up and I'm looking at your chart. So I guess the first thing that I would say is you're a sun in Sagittarius in the 9th house, and you know what journeys you've been going on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Inner and outer.
Yeah, it's because you reading your book and also, of course, working as a past life regressionist myself. Each time we do a regression, it is quite a journey, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been doing it for 20 plus years, and I never have a session that I don't visually journey participate with.
That's right. I mean, I always have the sense of being on the edge of my seat as I'm doing it because we're having to be so focused on what's happening. We're right there in person, aren't we?
Totally present in the moment. Yes, it's the best meditation is to guide a regression. 2-3 hours, you are just absolutely present. Yeah.
You're right. We really are very much. It is an exercise in mindfulness.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that struck me, and of course then you've got this. Oh gosh, yeah. Sorry, you know what it's like when you're looking at a chart, you see everything at once, don't you? So
I would say most people point, as far as healing and teaching, I have the mutable cross on that axis. And, so being a Sag and my ruling planet in Pisces and the 12th conjunct Jupiter on the ascendant is, of course, a pretty strong signature for the work that I do.
Exactly.
Yeah, Venus, Neptune in the 8th in Scorpio is also like really, going deep. Pluto touching every planet in my chart except for Mars and the nodes makes me very Plutonian, not into the, the surface level stuff, right?
No, that's right. And actually, the very first thing that caught my eye was the, Pisces Ascendant with Jupiter and Chiron sitting in the 12th. And I thought how apt, for somebody who spends so much of her life exploring past lives.
In between the worlds, as I say, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it is the very first thing that caught my eye there. It's and I think that for people who've watched this channel regularly, they're getting used to seeing Pisces and healing going together. Come up on so many charts, and the sun in the 9th for people who are journeying in one way or another. So I'm hoping people are beginning to see a pattern there.
Well, certainly the Virgo Pisces axis to me is associated with spiritual healing for sure.
Yeah, I there's no question of that in my mind. I'm just wondering, with that Pisces ascendant, how did you get interested in matters of spirituality? Was it from a very early age?
Yeah, I was born that way. I noticed in my practice, I don't know if it's the same for you as an astrologer, that it feels to me like the ascendant being so instinctual, it's something that you're not really aware of. It takes like age and consciousness and awareness to kind of appropriate your ascendant, is how I say it. And so for me, I was very Piscean, but kind of unaware of it, in that kind of naive, like I just thought everybody thought like that, or, was in love with the universe and, had mystical experiences and all that. So yeah, I mean, for me, it was always that. In fact, I moved in the last couple of years, or actually this year, and I was cleaning out, 20 years of mementos and things like that in my old house. And I found a box of book reports and things from school that my parents had kept, grammar school. So for us, that's like 5th, 6th, 7th grade. So that's like 8 to 12 or so, right? And I did a report where I actually regressed someone. I did a report on hypnotherapy and I regressed someone in 7th grade. I don't remember doing it, but I wrote a report on it. So clearly I was interested in it.
Yeah, that's very early on, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're right, we're not so much aware of our ascendants. I think it's because we're living them. Other people can see them, but we're actually too busy living them. We're younger to know that they're there, and they really embody the experience of our early lives. So it's not something that we would become aware of until we start looking back and processing those early lives. So so that's what I wondered, but there you were. Wow. There you were, grade 7, wanting to regress someone. So clearly this is a big part of you. And you're absolutely right. You brought it in with Jupiter and Chiron sitting in the 12th in Pisces. It's, what did your parents make of it?
My parents were Roman Catholic and I was raised Roman Catholic, but and it's funny because I never was interested in the personages of Christianity. I was always in love with the Holy Spirit. Like I remember like 6, 7, I mean, even younger, I just remember being, and I think that was, I guess, just an expression of my spirituality, of this idea that omnipresent, the divine is, always omnipresent and immanent, which is exactly what the, the principle of the Holy Spirit is about. So, I mean, I had problems with the dogma and questioned and things like that. But my parents, I think they didn't know what to make. So they just kind of went along. We're just like, oh, okay. Because I remember in 7th grade, I did a comparative religious study and I asked them to take me to different churches and synagogues because I wanted to like experience the different services and things. And they did it. So I guess they were like, whatever.
That's a real 9th house thing too. You've got that sun. That's such a 9th house. Now I have the sun in the 9th as well. And it has to be said that I was the one who dragged my parents to church. Not the other way around. I think I have very early memories of really thinking churches were the most beautiful places. And every time we were in a church, really just soaking in the atmosphere. It wasn't the mass as such or anything like that. I don't even remember ever going to mass as a young child. But, I guess my parents would take me into churches. I think I remember baptism or something like that, little things like that. And that was wonderful. And I do remember asking them to take me into churches so that I could see. And then later on, I guess around the time of First Communion, because I was also raised a Catholic like you, I would be the one who's saying, I want to go to mass. I wanted to. So, and it's just there, isn't it? That need from an early age when you've got the sun in the 9th, and particularly, I think, when there's such a strong Pisces influence, to know more, to be curious, to know more, understand, to look for meaning, that was the whole.
Absolutely looking for meaning. And that was the thing for me that I remember. It wasn't the dogma. I was curious about the different systems, but I also remember finding a translated copy of the Bhagavad Gita in 8th grade. And I remember reading that and what they called the transmigration of souls or reincarnation. It wasn't like a new concept to me. I mean, I read it and I don't remember being like, wow, this is, earth shattering or anything. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember then when I became more conscious of dogmas and people's prejudices and, so on and so forth, I just remember saying that I honored all paths that were seeking something more. And to me, that's what I saw in each tradition. It was inspirational and aspirational to me to see people reaching for something greater than themselves. Like you said, that search for meaning, right? That was what I always saw. So it was always like this. I always had this mystic kind of view, looking behind. And then, of course, as I got older and read the different mystical traditions, then understanding that the dogma is the exoteric and that in every tradition there's an esoteric, right? Like, Sufism is to Islam, as Gnostic Christianity is to Christianity, Vedanta is to Hinduism, etc. And so I was always, then as I was reading more, I got into the mystic traditions and definitely more pagan and earth-centered and shamanic in my view.
It's interesting because, of course, the other thing that struck me listening to you is you are a Sagittarius. You've got Mercury in Sagittarius, and freedom is so important. There is no place for dogma in free, within a free spirit. You have to be able to be free to explore, and also I think you've got the moon in Gemini too. So there's that need to analyze and to critically appraise, I guess. Or I know that that's something that we more associate with Virgo, but Gemini needs to ask questions. That I think that's what I'm getting at. It's asking why and collecting the information. And so I can see that.
Well, with the full moon in my chart, Gemini Sag, a lot of people have said that my right brain and left brain kind of work equally. And so that information gathering for me is in that Gemini part, which I'm well aware of. I could show you all the books in my house. But it's all about getting to this kind of, what is the meaning of that? And I think that's how the Sag Gemini works in me, is putting together, synthesizing, putting together many strands. And that's what astrology did for me. I mean, I remember when I discovered astrology, I remember thinking to myself, this is like looking at God thinking, right? The divine expression through the human psyche, and that each chart is a perfect picture. It's perfection in that person, which also removed me from any strands of dogma or self-righteousness that I did have, right? Not without my shadow. And I remember that was a kind of pivotal thing for me, which was probably also around 8th grade or first year of high school, just looking at a chart and understanding that it was a divine expression and perfection, and how each one is absolutely individual, gave me that. I don't know if I'm putting it into words, but
I got it. It's very difficult to express the sense of awe and wonder that we experience every time we look at a chart, and irrespective of what we might already be thinking as we're looking, when we're hearing it being spoken by the person in front of us. And I think it can only be called a mystical experience because there's magic within it. And, you know, it's whether you're practicing astrology from a psychological perspective, evolutionary astrology, or whether you're doing a horary chart, it doesn't matter why you're using it. The fact that you're reading what's happening in the moment, and the beauty of knowing that in a person's life, the story is there in the chart, and that actually it goes now beyond life in the work that you're doing, and that I really love too, is the life of the soul, understanding the life of the soul. That's the sense of awe and wonder that you're describing, and that I'm also trying to describe. It's describing the indescribable because it's magical. It's a magical feeling.
If you do it right, for sure. You know, if you look at a chart with that, and I don't mean beginner's mind, but you know, the thing is, because astrology can also be very formulaic, right? And then people can go in with their own subjective prejudices or lenses. We all have them, right? But to allow that to be stretched with each reading, because I can't tell you how many times, you know, you think you've summed somebody up, right? And then you look at their chart, and I'm not even talking clients. I'm talking like, you know, just people in my day-to-day life. And you know, you can be like, oh, well, that must be why they're blah, blah. You know, and then you look at their chart and you get a whole other dimension and understanding of where they're coming from. So that's, you know, that's part of the beauty, is the chart's ability to objectify beyond, if you allow yourself to be stretched, right? To me, that's doing it right.
Exactly. And that's then, because what that does is when you see where that person's coming from, what it does is it triggers compassion and empathy. Yeah. And so now it becomes an act of love because it's an act of understanding.
Well, and that's an act of personal growth too. I mean, that's how Jung defined the growth of the self, the big, what I call the big S self, right? Is a continual expansion of the little S self through empathy, through sympathy, empathy, and then compassion, right? It's embracing the other, and that's a sense of integrating the other into you, which then expands the biggest self, right? Exactly. Yeah.
So now I think I'm going to have to leave everybody in suspense, because if you are watching and you want to learn more about this aspect of astrology that we're calling evolutionary astrology, then you need to click on the link in the description box and listen to Lightways, because that's where the rest of that discussion can be heard. So in the meantime, we have had a privileged look at Patricia Walsh's charts. And Patricia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If anyone wanted to learn more about your work, where could they go?
Healthepast.com is one of my websites. I teach evolutionary astrology with two of my colleagues at our evolutionary astrology school called Soulwise. So you can find that. Well, there's also a website for that. And then the other branch of astrology that I've been kind of pioneering or putting together into a training, pioneering is experiential astrology, which grows from my love of the human psyche and using imagination in its elevated form. as an expression of soul, and that's kairosastrology.com, Kairos, Kairos Astrology.
And
So those are my three websites: Healed Past, Soul Wise, and Kairos Astrology.
I'll make sure the links are also on the description box. Patricia,
Great.
thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching. And next week, I believe I'll be speaking to Claire Martin about alchemy and astrology. Until then, goodbye.